Francis Melia, welcome to the Meat Mafia podcast. It's a pleasure to have you, my friend.
I'm looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to this since we got it in the books last week.
We've been joking. We're officially international. We've had a few Australian guests on, a few friends from Europe on, and now we have someone from Liverpool who's living in Venezuela. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, a Scouser in Venezuela. That's the name for someone from Liverpool. It's a Scouser. You probably know that with Darren Till, but yeah, a Scouser in Venezuela. That's going to be quite rare. You're not going to get many of them.
Francis, how long have you been in Venezuela for now?
Just over 3 months. So since the 1st of March, I got here. So yeah, just over 3 months.
Got it. And have you gone right from Liverpool to Venezuela?
Yeah, so we went from Liverpool and we were in Madrid, spent like 4 days in Madrid, and then we're here now in Venezuela.
Amazing. And we came into contact with you on Twitter. You have a great Twitter profile. It's really probably an avenue for people to learn more about your coaching, which we're interested in diving in here a little bit more about. Just as some context, you're an online fitness coach. You're posting all this amazing content. Where did your journey start? Like, what got you into this type of thing? I think giving a little backstory would be great.
Okay, so I just started training when I was 15, 16 years of age. I was an active kid, but I probably got to the age of 14, 15, and I probably spent too much time sitting in the house playing Call of Duty. Back then, that's what I used to spend all my time doing. So I probably got a little bit too, let's say, fat or chunky. I was never obese or anything like that. I never got to dangerous levels, but I wasn't happy with my shape. And as a young man, being 15, 16, and you're seeing all your friends, and you just don't want to feel like that or feel out of shape. So I started going to the gym. Didn't have a clue what I was doing whatsoever. My workout routine when I started it's laughable, but we all start somewhere. I just started in the gym, and as soon as I started that first session, I just got hooked. I know it's very cliche, but it was. As soon as I walked in and I started training, I just loved it, and everything just blossomed from there. There was always that. I always wanted to learn more about training, how the body worked, how the nutrition worked, how the whole recovery process. I just become addicted to just learning so much about it, and I wanted to get jacked. As every young man who is 15, 16, when you first walk in the gym, that's what you want to do. So it was just years of just trial and error, learning lots of different things via my own methods and watching videos on YouTube. I'd done all that for a couple of years. I done personal training qualifications. I then went to university and studied sports science for 3 years. And then that just led me into actually coaching in person. I was a coach in person for 2 to 3 years. And then COVID hit and all that shit. And then I just jumped into the online coaching because I think this is the way to scale the business and actually reach and coach a lot more people. But that's just a short little overview of how I'm here now with being an online coach.
No, it's a great story, and we were just curious for you. Was your philosophy? Did you start getting into the weights first and kind of molding your body, and then the nutrition piece followed second, or did both of those things kind of go hand in hand for you?
They both went hand in hand, but what you will notice, you probably both realize yourself when you're that age. 16 and you start training, you're still only a young boy. You haven't reached being a man yet, and there's certain changes that happen when you will get 18, 19. You start to develop a man's shape, and when you start training, and even my nutrition protocol wasn't where it is now. When I was 16, 17, I didn't really have a clue, but after a year or two of training, you start to get more experience and understand more about protein requirements, calories, all that type of stuff. And then you couple that with your body naturally turning into a man's shape. Yeah. All that good stuff starts to happen around 18, 19.
And for our listeners' benefits, I think they should head to your page and look at some of the transformations that you've had with some of your clients, because they're pretty remarkable. we were definitely curious about some of your philosophies, just basic, training philosophies. And then also maybe even before that, what sort of nutrition philosophies, guidelines do you generally recommend for people to either start with or eventually work towards when it comes to nutrition?
Okay, so it will always depend on the type of person and when they come to me. If we have someone who is at a higher body fat percentage, we're going to go more into a calorie deficit. Might have someone who comes to me and they're very skinny and we need to put on some size. Obviously, we're going to enter a calorie surplus. So that's the big thing, which that will dictate the person's calories targets. It depends on how they come to me. But let's just say we have an average 18, 19-year-old kid who is just starting in the gym. They're not fat, they're not skinny, just average shape. What would I have them do? So instantly we need to go to protein intake. As you're probably aware, I know you're very big on the proponents of meat. That's why the podcast is called the Meat Mafia. So that's the first thing I will do with people. We need to sort their protein intake, because the average 18, 19-year-old boy now is just, what is their diet going to consist of? Absolute garbage, so that's the first thing. I'm going to come in and we're going to get the protein levels all the way up to a minimum, 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if you have a 170-pound male, we're going to be eating 170 grams of protein. That's the first thing that comes in. So then obviously we get into the whole seed oil debate and, all the processed garbage that's in the food of modern society. So we start cutting out all of that processed shit. Everything comes from whole foods, all that type of stuff. As I said, we get the protein up, a lot of the red meat intake goes up. So there's some of the big things that instantly I just come in and I tear someone's diet apart and we start eating some proper stuff, and it makes a big difference.
Francis, how important is it for your clients to be actually doing the cooking of their own meals versus eating out in their own physical transformation and success?
It makes a huge difference. It's one thing I always try and get across from the start with them. Like, I'm not telling someone to never go out and eat at a restaurant ever, because you can't live a life like that. We need some sort of balance. But if we really need to be dialed in with our nutrition, you need to get used to going to the store and buying all of your own food and learning how to cook and prep things properly, because the amount of garbage that is loaded in all of the food when you eat out nowadays, it's criminal. So you need to be aware of this and actually take some ownership and start prepping your own food.
Francis, just back to the protein point, what do you typically, so you start at like 1 gram per pound of body fat or per pound of body weight.
Yeah.
Do you transition them closer to, because like I've heard like anywhere in the range of like 1.5 to 1.8, even higher sometimes. What are you generally targeting?
So a lot of the research, it says 0.8 gram of protein per pound is sufficient. So let's say 170 pounds dude, they might get away with 140, 150 gram of protein. That's going to suffice. I just like to cover all bases just with one gram per pound. I think any more than that, it's not really necessary. Right. I just find it covers all bases with 1 gram per pound, and I think for most people you're good to go with that. The only situation where I'd have someone eat a little bit more protein than that would be if they're in a calorie deficit and we've been in a deficit for a long time, and we need to keep that protein just a little bit higher to spare any muscle loss as we get deeper into a diet. So there's certain situations where protein can be a little bit higher, but for the average person who's going to be listening to this podcast, 1 gram per pound of body weight is going to cover all bases.
What's the general philosophy behind that? Is it geared more towards satiety so that their hunger is met, or is it more focused on muscle building? Maybe a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. We need to look at it from a lens of, are we trying to build muscle or are we trying to get leaner? Now, if someone is trying to build muscle, we obviously need enough protein for amino acids to be digested, and we actually build muscle protein synthesis to occur. That's if we're trying to actually build muscle. If we're trying to get leaner, so we're trying to lose body fat and maintain all of our muscle mass, we need enough protein in the body, because what happens, one thing that I don't think people understand with protein is that the body doesn't make protein. We have to eat protein throughout specific feedings throughout the day, whereas the body will store carbohydrates and store fat. It does not store protein. So the actual feeding of protein throughout the day is critical to keep protein synthesis levels high and keep protein in the body so the body can utilize it.
Francis, are you very particular about the specific type of animal protein that you will intake and have your clients eat as well? Like, are there types of protein that you'll have them gravitate towards? Do you try and have them base it on their own preferences? Like, if they like fish, you'll have them eat a lot of fish. Just like curious what you think about that.
It is mainly on their preferences, but I will always recommend a lot more red meat, a lot more things like, again, it depends whether someone is trying to gain weight or we're trying to lose weight, because if someone is trying to lose body fat, I may have them tend to gravitate towards more leaner cuts of meat. So maybe something like a 5% ground beef, whereas if someone is gaining weight, they may get away with a 10% ground beef. There's just subtle differences like that. I'm just a big proponent of, getting your protein from animal sources. And if someone does need to have whey protein shakes to fill in the gaps, I don't necessarily recommend that. But for some people, they may need to do that if they can't get enough protein via whole food sources. That's the only time I would ever recommend to supplement with protein.
What are your general thoughts there on whey protein? Is it just you would prefer them to have a higher quality protein source, a more balanced protein source, as opposed to just hammering the whey protein shake after the workout?
Yeah, it's as we know, the micronutrient content that comes from a lot of red meat and just whole food sources, it's far superior than a whey protein shake. And you also need to, if you do buy a whey protein, you need to make sure it's a good quality, because there is a lot of shit protein powders out there that are loaded with absolute garbage. So you need to make sure it's a good protein powder. And if you do have protein shakes, just make sure that you're still trying to do everything you can to get your protein from whole food sources, because it is superior.
Yeah, I've even found with myself the periods where I've wanted to put on weight and muscle, it's easy to want to opt for the shake every once in a while just because it's so convenient. But I just feel like for myself, it's an excuse because I always have ground beef in my fridge and it literally takes 5 to 10 minutes to whip up an amazing meal that my body digests well. Do you find that that's the same too, for the most part, for yourself?
Yeah, well, for me, I don't know whether you've heard of there's a guy in the fitness industry called Stan Efferding. I'm not sure whether you've heard of Stan.
He's incredible.
He talked the vertical diet with his ground beef and white rice. He calls it the monster mash. It's easily digestible, all of the nutrients that the body needs, and it's a perfect combination of food, ground beef and rice. So I'm all for that.
Is there anything on the personal training side that any foundational beliefs when you're trying to get someone from 0 to 1 that you apply? So you have someone who comes in, no experience in the gym. What sort of things are you thinking about when you're applying a program for them?
So the first thing, I always do a screening process with a client. I always like to know about their previous training, injury histories, how long they've been training, all that type of stuff, because you can't give someone a cookie cutter program. Everybody is different. So the first thing I look for, or what I get to do with the clients, I like to get them to move properly. So you might think, what does that mean, move properly? Well, some people just move like shit. Like they might have been training for a year or two, doing half reps on everything, just not squatting to full depth, for example. They have no hamstring flexibility for deadlifts. The shoulders are all fucked up. So we'll take the first month to 6 weeks to get them moving properly, and then we progress into the bigger movements, because you do not want to load on faulty movement mechanics, because that is asking for injury in the future. So as I said, I've had this before with clients who don't have the mobility to squat. So what I like to do, for an example, will be something like a goblet squat with a kettlebell. And it will give them a couple of weeks of learning how to squat properly, learn the motor pattern, and then we can then eventually switch to a barbell on their back, and we just load them up slowly. funnily enough, when you asked me about this, I had a client, I posted about this on Twitter last week. He's a client who's in his 60s. And when he came to me last year, he couldn't squat at all. He just had no mobility whatsoever. We used the kettlebell for about 6 to 8 weeks. We slowly progressed them up. And then we went to the barbell. Okay. So over the last 9 months, we've just been slowly using the barbell, squatting a couple of times a week. And he's now up to something like 220 for sets of 6 to 8. Now that's a 60-year-old man going from not being able to squatting 2 plates for sets of 6 to 8. Now that's what it takes. That's a year of work, but it just shows that it's doable when you do it the right way and you scale your progressions and you're patient.
And do you find that there's something about the kettlebell in particular, maybe it's just a little bit of a lighter weight, or it just helps you with that depth to be able to learn how to squat properly, and then you can progress to the barbell in due time?
Well, what's good about the kettlebell is that it doesn't actually load the spine with a barbell on your back does. So for one, as a beginner, it's not as dangerous. They don't have to worry about the balance issues and falling over. You hold the kettlebell in front of your body and you can, it's just a good way to learn the squat pattern without having the barbell on your back. So it builds a little bit of core strength as well, the thoracic mobility, upper back strength to stay in position. So it's just a nice little progression that we go into a barbell squat from.
Do you feel a particular way about front squatting versus back squatting? Do you like clients to do both? Because I feel like each squat gets you into like a different type of depth.
But this is something I've been utilizing front squats in my training for the past 2 to 3 months, and I hadn't done front squats for years because I thought they were trash. I thought they were garbage, and that was poor thinking on my end, because front squats are hard. They fucking suck when you're doing them. You're getting choked out by the barbell, but
Literally,
they are a phenomenal exercise. What I like to do was maybe one day in the week do normal back squats, and then on a secondary squat day, I like to throw front squats in, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. Front squats are a lot more quad dominant because of the extra knee flexion in the bottom position. They're going to build an absolute monstrous upper back because you have to hold that thoracic extension in place. So front squats are brilliant. I would recommend them for a lot of people.
Are there a few basic exercises that you steer people towards? Like, I've watched videos online and experimented myself, like deadlift, pull-ups, dips are 3 that come to mind for me that are just like hitting your entire body, great for basically the full range of all your musculature. So are there like, 3 to 5 lifts that you try to steer people towards?
I always get everyone to follow the basic movement patterns. Now that can be a hip hinge, a squat, a push, a pull, and a lunge variation. So some of my favorites out of them. So my favorite hinges will be deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, squats, back squats, front squats. You have horizontal pushes, so things like a bench press, dumbbell presses, even weighted push-ups are a phenomenal exercise. You have horizontal rows, so things like Penlay rows, seal rows. I'm not sure whether you've ever tried seal rows, but they're a great exercise. And then you have all your vertical presses, OHP, dumbbell presses overhead, and your vertical pulls, any sort of chin-ups, pull-ups, pull-downs. I never gravitate towards 3 to 5 favorite exercises because there's so many different exercises and so many tools for the job that if you box yourself into 3 to 5 favorite exercises, you're limiting so much of what you can give to people because there's so many things for different people.
Francis, how important do you feel the barbell is to being able to get strong and jacked?
Again, these are questions that I've been just thinking of myself and talking about a lot on Twitter the past couple of months. It seems to be a common topic, but if you would have asked me 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said, you need the barbell. You can't get jacked without the barbell. But now I've become a lot more educated, and as much as I love the barbell, I don't think you don't specifically need the barbell to get strong and jacked. As long as if you can load a muscle through a full range of motion and progressively overload that, you can do that via calisthenics, any type of machine. or dumbbells. It doesn't necessarily have to be a barbell. Although if I had to recommend, I would have a combination of all of them different types of training methods to really build a strong and jack physique. I think you need all of them.
What does your philosophy look like around training a male client versus a female client? Do you tinker the program a bit for the differences?
At the moment, I mainly do just train males. I've trained a couple of women, but a lot of my training is geared towards training men. But there is subtle differences. I'm not fully aware of the differences for women because that's a very complicated topic. You have to time training cycles around their periods, all that type of stuff, and that's not something that I specialize in. So I leave that to the women coaches because that is going down a rabbit hole, and that is not my wheelhouse whatsoever. But for training for men, there is slight differences, but in general, the main principles do still stand. You need to get stronger over time, progressively overload your training, but there is subtle differences in the way you have to do that for women to time it with their cycles.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of modern women are waking up to the fact that lifting heavy weights is good for you and it's not going to make you bulky. It's actually going to get you the physique that you want, right? It's like there's so many women that have this like chronic cardio syndrome where they feel like they need to be like white knuckling their diet with salads or on the treadmill, where in fact, like squatting, lifting heavy, that gets them the exact body type that they want. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, 100%. That's what women need to be doing. They need to be lifting weights and get off the cardio machines and eating salads. Get on the squat rack, start doing some deadlifts, start lifting some weights, and start eating some more meat, up your protein intake, and don't be scared of carbohydrates as well. That's another one that I see to a lot of women and even men. There is this fear in the industry and fear mongering around carbohydrates, and it needs to stop.
Yeah. How important is mindset when it comes to your coaching program? What sort of things are you talking through with your clients in terms of, how to get focused in the gym, how to make this thing sustainable, how to have more confidence in and outside of the gym? Where do you kind of guide your clients on that topic?
I'm always big on being process orientated instead of thinking about the goal. So don't think about, the goal of being strong and jacked, which might take a couple of years to get there. Think about falling in love with the process, ticking the boxes every single day, making sure you're training. You're not missing training sessions, making sure that you're eating every single meal when you need to, you're getting your daily steps in, you're going for your walks, you're prioritizing sleep and recovery. Just make sure that you're checking the boxes every day. Fall in love with the actual process of it, and things will take care of themselves. Don't be so blind and focused on the end goal because it doesn't become enjoyable. And the best clients for me are the ones who just embrace the process and they love the whole journey of it all. That's what I always try and get through to everyone.
Yeah. And speaking of embracing the process, I mean, when you go to your Twitter page, there's such a powerful transformation that you've posted. I think it was 2020. You went from 260 to 215 over an 18-week period. And I remember I first saw the picture and I was like, my first thought was like, is this Photoshopped? Because I didn't know that it was possible to make progress like that because it looks so unbelievable. Can you just talk through like maybe just some of the core principles that you stuck to get to the shape that you were in on that picture on the right? Because we'll link to it in the show notes.
So the picture on the left is what I don't think people understand is that I have been training for 8 years before that picture on the left. I just got too fat on a bulk. That was my fault. I just YOLO bulked and I ate too much food. So that's why I look like that. But there was a lot of muscle mass underneath that physique. So then I was about 260, and over the course of 18 weeks, I had to switch my whole mindset. I went into a calorie deficit, still tried to train the same way and try and maintain all my strength. So I remember I went from 260. Within the first week, I was probably down to 250. The amount of bloat and glycogen and water weight that I lost in that first week, it was huge. So within the 18-week period, I probably lost 2 to 3 pounds every week. That's how I was able to do that. People might look at that and think that's a lot of weight to lose. I also had a lot of body fat. I don't think people realize as well that I'm 6'4", so I'm quite a big dude. So I've got, I burn a lot of calories anyway. My deficit, I was eating 3,000 calories and I still lost 2 to 3 pounds a week. So that just goes to show, my maintenance calories and my BMR, it's around 4,000 calories a day. So it was quite a not comfortable process, but it wasn't as hard as it might be for someone else.
And were you writing out every meal that you were going to eat ahead of time and being very calculated with your calories in, calories out?
So what I do when I'm dieting, I eat the same meal at the same time every day. I don't skew away from that. It's the same thing every day. I just go into autopilot and I know exactly what I need to eat and when I need to eat. So for the first week or two, it's a bit of a trial and error process. You get used to, you fit your macros and what meals hit your macro targets. And then I just go into autopilot. The body fat it strips off each week.
Were you very intentional about your carb intake as well, or were you more so just focusing on eating really high quality food sources?
Carb intake is such a huge proponent of my whole training, because this is one thing that a lot of people do wrong when they go into a calorie deficit. So they slash carbohydrates intake right the way down. Now, what happens is if you slash your carbohydrates intake right down, your performance is going to tank in the gym, because you've been used to eating so many carbohydrates, and then all of a sudden you feel flat. Your performance will tank in the gym. You won't be able to lift as much weight for sets and reps. Now, what's that going to lead to? Muscle loss, because performance has went down. So that's exactly what you want to avoid when you go into a calorie deficit. So what did I do when I was getting lean? You base a lot of your carbohydrates pre-workout for when you need it most. Let's say I was training in the afternoon, let's say around 12 p.m., 1 p.m. I don't need carbohydrates at 8, 9 p.m. at night after I've done all my training. I need a lot of my carbohydrates in that 3 to 4 hour period before I go in the gym and into workout. So let's say I can remember perfectly, I was eating 330 grams of carbohydrates a day when I was dieting. I was probably eating around 200, 250 within that pre-workout window and into workout window. That's how important carbohydrates are when you're in a deficit to maintain your performance. I can't speak of that highly enough. That is a big thing that I do with all of my clients. We make sure that any carbohydrates we have in the day when we're in a deficit, it's all around that training session, because that is when you need it most. That is something I just want to get through to the listeners. Make sure if you're dieting in a deficit, keep that carb intake as high as possible and put it around the workout window. That's when you need it.
And Francis, just for someone who might be a novice, carbohydrates would be utilized in that window because they're going to be a more immediate fuel source. Is that how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, so carbohydrates, it's the body's preferred source of fuel. It's the primary source of fuel. It wants to use that. It's responsible for all sorts of, let's say, explosive actions and a lot of work that is done in that 10 to 20, 10 to 30 second range. So a lot of lifting weights is done in that capacity. Carbohydrates is the main fuel for that. So if you're going into a training session and you're already on low glycogen levels and your gas tank is empty, just think of it. You're trying to go into a warehouse on an empty gas tank without carbohydrates. Now, can you still train? Yes, but it's not optimal. It's like trying to drive a car with a flat tire. You might still get to your destination, but it's not optimal. There's going to be it's a big pain in the ass, and it's just not the right way to do things.
What carbs, Francis, have you found work best for you and your clients, just from digestion, performance, etc.?
Simple carbohydrates are always better. Something that's going to digest pretty easily. So white rice over something like brown rice, because brown rice takes a lot longer to digest. So I've always found white rice, lots of fruit. At the moment, because I'm here in Venezuela, I'm big on plantains. I'm not sure whether you guys have had them, but plantains are they're so good. So they just digest so easily. just you're looking for foods that is gonna be absorbed quickly into the bloodstream, because the last thing you want is a big load of food stuck in your stomach when you're about to go and do some heavy squats, because we all know that food is going to end up over the platform. And so you just got to be careful.
What's your thoughts on cardio? How do you fit cardio into the picture?
I'm a big fan and proponent of people keeping up their conditioning. There's no need to get lazy. One thing personally, what I just do, I hit a minimum of 10 to 12K steps every day, non-negotiable. That just keeps my conditioning up, my work capacity up. It's just so easy to do. And if anything, it actually improves my recovery because of the fresh blood flow. Any sort of aches and pains and joints, and it just helps with everything. Fresh blood flow is such a huge thing to, actually feeling and moving better. But in terms of other types of cardio, I'm a big proponent of letting people doing something that they like to do. Now, whether someone likes to go and play some football or basketball once or twice a week, that's fine. Something that gets your heart rate up and gets you sweating and gets you breathing. I'd much rather you go and do that than you go into a gym and run on a treadmill for 30 minutes, because let's be honest, that isn't fun compared to playing some basketball. So it is highly dependent on the individual, but cardio is such a huge proponent of a training program. Don't think it's going to kill your gains, because that is just old school dinosaur thinking. It couldn't be any further from the truth.
Yeah, it's interesting how many people they'll like bury themselves with like an hour-long workout, and then they'll just like lay horizontal on a couch or a bed the rest of the day, and they're not getting any of the benefits like you're talking about. I know Stan efforting is huge on those 10-minute walks after digestion, and that's such an easy way to get to 10,000 steps. And like I noticed a legitimate difference in my digestion just taking a quick walk after my meals.
It makes a big difference, especially if you are trying to bulk and gain weight. If you eat and then you go for a walk afterwards, it clears up room in your stomach again for that other meal that you're trying to put down in 2 or 3 hours. Where if you just lay on the couch, it doesn't digest as fast, and then when it's time to eat your other meal and you're trying to force some calories down, it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
What are some common mistakes that people make when you first come across them in your coaching program?
Some of the big mistakes will be, I'd say, people are very, very impatient with weight selections. People want to go too heavy too soon without laying the foundations. Now, when you start a training block, you never go gung-ho or balls to the wall for the first week, because you have nowhere to go and build into a training block and progressively overload things. So I think that is one mistake that a lot of people, they try and be Rambo in the first week of a training block. You can't do that. You just got to be patient. So that is just one thing in general that I think a lot of people need to understand. This whole process of getting strong and jacked, it takes a long time. You need to be extremely patient. It will not happen overnight. And that's the same when you start a training block. You've got to be patient, progress slowly, and let the body, acclimate to the load that you're trying to put on the body.
How do you feel, Francis, about like bodybuilding style training versus powerlifting versus Olympic lifting? Like when you're crafting programs for your clients, are you kind of blending a lot of different elements together in programs? Do you like one style versus the other? Just curious your take on that.
Again, it will all depend on the individual and what their goals are. That is always number one when you design a training program. I don't have much experience with Olympic weightlifting. That isn't my wheelhouse. But powerlifting and bodybuilding, yeah, I'm all about those two. I like to try and combine both bodybuilding and powerlifting. Both of the best in each sport. They both learn from each other. You go and look. Some of the best bodybuilders will take some information from the best powerlifters and vice versa, because the best way to get stronger is to get bigger. The best way to get bigger is to get stronger. So they are both on the same continuum.
Is there Francis, is there a certain set and rep range that you really like?
Again, it depends. It depends on your main goal. If you're trying to get bigger, if hypertrophy is the main goal, anywhere from sets of 6 to 20, taking close to failure, you're going to be good to go. Get stronger in that rep range over time, and you will get bigger. When it comes to strength, If we're talking more general strength, you're going to be a lot more in that 3 to 6 rep range. But then if we really want to peak and express maximal strength, you're going to need to do a lot of practice in that 1 to 3 rep range to really sharpen that neurological efficiency, because the nervous system, it needs to adapt to produce maximum force. Now, if you're doing sets of 6 to 8, it is not conditioned to do an all-out max effort set of 1 to 2. So there is slight differences that you'd need to make to your training and the reps that you're doing. It all depends on what is your actual goal.
What are some of the craziest transformations that you've seen?
Crazy transformations. There's a couple on Twitter. I'm trying to think of some of the guys who've had crazy transformations. I can't think of the names off the top of my head, but I've seen some crazy ones on Twitter over the past couple of months. Just dudes who went from like 300 pounds all the way down to 180, and it's crazy. There's also a dude on Twitter now. I think he's called something like Accountability Nation.
Oh yeah, I saw that guy.
Yeah, so he keeps posting his pictures every day, and he's doing an amazing job. He started out, I'm not sure what weight he was, but he's on the right path for sure. And it's cool to see someone taking control and taking ownership of their life and doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and just have the vulnerability to be able to post that, and other people draw inspiration from that, and it's like this chain link of momentum almost, where other people then want to go out and try and do it on their own too.
I respect it. I respect anyone who will post content on social media. Never mind if you are obese and you're not really in great shape and you're still posting pictures. Fair play, because I'm not sure whether you guys have had it, but the amount of trolls and people on the internet, it's crazy that they come out in force when they see somebody doing well.
Yeah. Maybe to that point, when did you make the transition over to online, and what's been the biggest wins and losses in terms of moving your business to an online business?
So I was a coach in person for 3 years, 2 to 3 years, and then COVID hit in, I think it was March 20, was it 2019 or 2020? I think it was 2020.
Yeah.
2020. So gym shut down. At that time, I didn't have an online business. I didn't have a Twitter account. I had nothing. All of my coaching was done in person. Wow. All of my income was in person, and they shut gyms down for 4 months in the UK. So my income went to zero for 4 months. So it was during that time, you probably around the May, June of the lockdown. So we were 3 or 4 months into lockdown. I hadn't earned any money for 3 or 4 months, and I thought, right, I need to do something now to stop this from ever happening again. I'm not going to be at the mercy of the government closing gyms. So I thought, right, I've been on Twitter just lurking. I had like 50 followers. I didn't post. I was just the average lurker in the comments, and I didn't do much on Twitter. So I seen a lot of other big names in the fitness industry posting content. So I thought, after 4 months of being in lockdown, I've got a lot of knowledge and wisdom here that I've got from years of training and coaching people. I'm going to start posting on Twitter. I'm just going to go for it. Fuck what people think. I'm just going for it. I'm going to stack all the chips on me. And that's what I done. Just started tweeting every single day. It relentlessly was like 3 to 5 tweets, just putting value out there, commenting and socializing with everybody, engaging with all the other accounts. And it just grew. And I remember I got to like 1,000 followers, which is a big milestone. I got there after like 3 months. And then the pictures of my before and after transformation. So throughout all this time of building the Twitter at the start and during the end of the lockdowns, that's when I started dieting. So then it got to the October of 2020. I posted them pictures out. You'll see it. It's at the top of my profile, and it went viral. It blew up. I had like 2,000 followers when I posted that picture. Within 24 hours, I had 5,000 followers, and that picture had like 4 or 5K likes. So it just blew up over the whole Twitter sphere. And I had a lot of people messaging me from that tweet about online coaching. Can you help me coach and all this type of stuff? And I had no online business set up then. So here I am with my notifications on my Twitter account just popping off. I've got a tweet going viral, and I've got my messages just blowing up. People asking about coaching. So you can imagine there was a lot to take in at that time, and I didn't know what to do. So luckily, in the gym where I was, there was a couple of other coaches who were into online coaching. So I got a Google Doc, a makeshift Google Doc, and I posted that underneath the tweet for people to put their details in if they were interested in coaching. So that was the start of the online coaching. I started communicating with people, and then I signed my first client, and that was a big win. So after that weekend, and when I posted that picture, I had a couple of online clients, and I'm not sure whether you know what it feels like, but after that initial moment when you first see some money coming in from online, it's like a light bulb goes off in your brain, and it's like, okay, this is something that I can do moving forward. So then a year went by, and I was still training and coaching people in the gym in person, and I was slowly building the Twitter audience and the online business, acquiring more clients. That just took a bit of time to do. And then I got to Christmas just gone, so 6 months ago, I was at the busiest I'd ever been with online clients. I was still coaching in the gym, and I thought, right, it's time to stack all of the chips on me, and let's get out of coaching in the gym and let's go fully all in with the online business. And that's what I done in January. Just fully transferred everything into online coaching, put all my efforts into this, and building the Twitter, Instagram, and just coaching clients online. So, and that's led me to here now, 6 months after going all in with online, and I'm the busiest I've ever been online. Things are going well, and I'm just looking forward to just continuing to grow everything.
What sort of resources or sources of inspiration? You mentioned Stan earlier. Are there any other people that you turn to as kind of leaders in the health and wellness world that you like to, either for your own purposes or your clients' purposes, kind of give those guys some exposure and share their wisdom too?
So there's so many different types of people. I've used a lot of study on YouTube over the years. Some of the big people that I've went to are someone called Chad Wesley Smith. He's the owner of Juggernaut Training. It's a big powerlifting company in the US. I've got a lot of information from him. People like Dave Tate, who's the owner of Elite FTS. You might be aware of him. He's just a legend in the strength game. People like Dave Tate, Chad Wesley Smith, Renaissance Periodization. I'm not sure whether you've heard of them. They've got another big YouTube account. There's just tons of just golden information from people who've been doing this for decades. So that's just where I've learned a lot of my information, from people who are better than me. A lot of information is being learned just from being in the trenches myself and doing this for years. That's the best combination. Do it yourself, but then learn and take advice from people who are better than you at it.
Francis, if people are looking to get into touch with you or start coaching with you, where should they go?
So if you go to my Twitter account at Coach FHM, there is a link to my website. In my Twitter bio, you'll be able to schedule a free call with me. And we can have a little chat about your goals and what you'd like to do. And we can go from there.
Perfect. Well, this is great, man. There's so much knowledge packed in a short period of time. We're pumped to promote this. We think people are going to get a lot of value out of it too, because we tend to focus so much on the nutrition, but just hearing your philosophy on strength and how both of those things build off of each other is fantastic. So, we just really appreciate all the work that you've done. It's honestly inspiring for us too, to just see the transformation that you've made, even just thinking about what your mindset was probably like when you weren't making money for 4 months versus now you have this unbelievable self-sufficient business that you very intentionally have built for yourself. So, appreciate you giving us inspiration. Thank you for coming on, and hopefully we'll get to link up in person at some point soon. So appreciate you, man.
Oh, it was good to chat, man. I love talking about this stuff.
Thanks, Francis.